What should I know about Veritasium?
It was under the blood moon. I felt my heart come. I held you in this strange light, a place where
So
shadows
basically, I'm
run.
looking to tie the entire world to Veritasium.
Yeah, I still have a question.
Okay.
Um, Hearing, I've heard, some of this before. You know how they print money and that kind of stuff. Um, Things I've heard in the past, people have said that the first thing when you invest, the first thing you should do is invest in your own home. So that should be like your first investment. But how do you know okay, so beyond that, so if you so okay so if a person invested in their own home, and then beyond that investing other things, how does a person know what to invest in? We know nothing about investment. We don't know how what to do, what to invest in. We know nothing about what we have go to school like you did. I hope you're understanding me.
I
So
understand what you mean.
it's very difficult.
Well, everything I learned about investing, none of it came from school, not one bit.
Okay.
So, um, a lot of the academics are going to get mad at me, but listen, if the professors were really that good at investing, wouldn't all the professors be wealthy from investing?
Okay.
Right? So, if you are going to learn about wealth creation from somebody who's not wealthy, you probably have the wrong teacher. Okay.
Okay.
Let's suppose you want to learn, you don't have, say you don't have a car, but you do have a body, right? You have a heart attack, right? You want to go into a doctor, you want to go in a hospital, you have a heart attack, you want to live. Okay. Do you go to a hospital with a cardiac surgeon, or do you go to the Volkswagen dealer for that mechanic to work on your heart? Do you understand what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, that Volkswagen mechanic may be very, very good at heart surgery, but I'm not really trying to take that chance. Chances are he's not. So, a college professor could be a good, nice guy. He could be very knowledgeable. You don't know. But if he's not wealthy or has not generated wealth, learning about generating wealth from him might not be a good idea. Okay. You can look at the wealthy people, and I told you, go to the Forbes list, look at the wealthy people, and you can read. Just look how they generate their wealth. None of them did it by saving in banks. Most of them did it because they started their own businesses. Okay, a lot of them did it because they weren't afraid of failure. And you have to fail. You know, you usually have to fail 99 to 102 times to succeed once or twice. It's the way it works. If you're afraid of failure, then you're afraid of making money on a real level. Um, so there's information there and knowledge there. You just have to attain it. It's a lot easier to have somebody to teach you, but you need to find somebody who's capable, has achieved, and is willing to teach you. And while you're looking for that person, there's a lot of information around. Just follow what rich people do. You want to be poor? Here's a surefire way of doing it. Find a bunch of poor people and do exactly what they do and see if it works. You will be poor. You want to be wealthy? Find a bunch of wealthy people and do what they do. You will be wealthy. Chances are, if you want to be sickly, find a bunch of sickly people and do what they do. If you want to be healthy, find a bunch of healthy people. You want to be happily married? Don't go find a bunch of miserable single people and do exactly what the miserable single people do. And I don't want to oversimplify it because that does sound like an oversimplification, but don't do what they say, do what they do. Does that answer the question?
Okay. Um, I have a quick question. I love I understand everything, all the analogies, everything like that. I absolutely love it. Okay, for people who are, because I'm sure for a lot of people this will be new, right? In terms of, you talk about the way of thinking, and in
Which
terms
is
of say,
sad. I hate to interrupt you, but that's sad because you go through pre-K,
mm-hmm,
nursery school, first kindergarten, first grade, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade. Most people finish either grade school or high school. Most people. And then a lot of people go off to college, even though not everybody. But you can go
Right.
through a minimum of 12 years up to what, 20 years of schooling, and this is the
Right.
first time you're hearing that. That there's a reason for that, but again, I believe that the system trains people to become workers and not to attain a certain amount of wealth, because if they do, they will no longer work for the capitalist class, who need people to labor to make them wealthier. Capitalism
Right.
doesn't work at the top if you have nobody at the bottom to work. But I hate to cut you off, but that's my little political spin on that. I'm sorry, my
Yeah, no
apologies.
problem. No
Okay.
problem. It's cool. So yeah. So so now it comes the time for when you want to detrain, right? For lack of a better word, your mind. Um, you're trying to get to a certain goal. For those who are new to like investing or the idea of not of or making, say for example, getting to a point in life of where you want your investments to be at a, say lack of a better word, higher percentage than your saving percentage.
Hmm.
Um, how do you go about that? Is it just like jumping in and taking that risk? Is it, um, how do you start to detrain from like, okay, from the normal thing that every day? The normal thing is to, like you said, you go, you save in the bank, you do this. There's all these different things, money markets, and different things like that. How does someone new, go about detraining from that, that whole process that you've been, taking on every year?
Learn. You have to learn. You know, when you learn, you build up your intellectual capital and save significant physical damage. It can't be taken from you. Financial capital can't be taken. Lawsuits, government intervention, just bad luck, market crashes. Intellectual capital cannot be taken. Teach yourself, right, from multiple sources and be skeptical of each source. Remember, don't do what they say, do what they do. Find wealthy people, replicate what they do. Because they're wealthy, you have to do it at a smaller scale. Just remember, that's what they did too when they got started. Most significant wealth is wealth that starts from scratch. It doesn't come from dynastic wealth, is a way of putting it. Dynasties that pass down from family to family. Because there's this concept called shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves, where basically it's the Chinese proverb, where you have a poor person who works very hard, builds up assets, right, becomes wealthy, passes on to their children. But they spent so much time building assets that they failed to teach their children how to build assets and maintain those assets. But they made enough money where those children are still able to live very well. Those children have children, and since they were never taught how to make and maintain money, right, they squandered some. The grandchildren have absolutely no idea. So unless you have a very lucky or a prodigal child, then that third generation ends up just as poor or poorer than that first generation, who basically had to slave in the rice fields. So the way to prevent that is education. Teach yourself how to amass these assets, okay? Pass the assets on to your children, and the most important asset to pass is not your financial capital, but your intellectual capital, okay? Pass that off to your child and teach them. Your child now builds on that capital base, that intellectual capital base, and that's what's most important. And that financial capital base is just a tool. Someone mentioned money is a tool. It's just a tool that you use to amplify your intellectual capital. Successful families build on this generation after generation. So instead of getting poorer, shirt sleeve to shirt sleeves, they get wealthier, generation after generation after generation. Most average people only know these as, myths or, stories of, old wives' tales. But examples are the Rothschilds, right? The Rockefellers, where they have significant capital, political capital. Many of them are politicians, financial capital. They not only own banks, they own banking systems, and they own massive amounts of real estate, technology, etc. I would love to have a more diverse representation in this dynastic wealth. And that's a very long conversation. If you go back long enough, that dynastic wealth, the largest concentration of dynastic wealth was in Africa. Anybody who knows the story of Mansa Musa, who was allegedly the richest man in the world, he was so wealthy he caused inflation just by visiting a city. Okay, but in order for that to maintain, there's a lot of variables that you have to watch and control. And if you chase wealth for the sake of wealth, you will end up losing it. That's why, for the same sake as if you hoard money, you'll end up getting poor. You have to understand how the system works, how influence and power works, and why you should go after it. And most importantly, you build up the most important capital you can, intellectual capital. With intellectual capital, you get wiped out. Given enough time, you will make it back. Okay? With financial capital, you could get wiped out, and you're just wiped out. Okay, that's a very long-winded way of answering the question, but here's a shorter way. Find wealthy people, emulate it, and just do it on a smaller basis. If a lot of people are buying the top 2 or 3 cryptocurrencies, if a lot of people are investing in real estate, like income-producing real estate, if a lot of people are doing XYZ, and I don't mean, a tip you heard from your friend's cousin's nephew. I'm talking about the people who you can see have established significant wealth. Okay? Simply do what they do. Okay? And don't do what they say. Okay? Did I answer your question in detail, or did I talk around the point and not get to it?
No, absolutely. Thank you. That was that was clarified.
Okay. I hope I was able to distract everybody from doing their vision boards and they're not done, because that means I did a good job grabbing your attention. Even though
I did an amazing job at grabbing everyone's attention. I was putting little Reggie notes. You can coin that. You can borrow that, Reggie, in the chat. So hopefully people were reading them and taking notes. I was taking notes and completing my vision board. I was